Since its adoption, the Constitution has been amended 27 times, reflecting the nation's evolving values and priorities. The first 10 amendments, known as the Bill of Rights, were added shortly after the Constitution's ratification to protect individual liberties. The U.S. Constitution has served as the supreme law of the land, providing a framework for resolving disputes, ensuring justice, and protecting the rights and freedoms of American citizens. It has guided the nation through times of war and peace, economic prosperity and challenges, and social and political transformations. The Constitution's enduring strength lies in its adaptability and its ability to provide a foundation for democracy while allowing for the growth and evolution of the United States as a nation. It continues to be a symbol of American values and ideals, a source of inspiration for democracy worldwide, and a living testament to the wisdom and foresight of its framers. Chapter 6, Civil War and Reconstruction, 1861 to 1877. The Civil War and the subsequent era of Reconstruction marked one of the most tumultuous and transformative periods in American history, profoundly shaping the nation's identity in addressing critical issues related to slavery, states' rights, and civil rights. The roots of the Civil War can be traced back to long-standing tensions between the northern and southern states, primarily over the institution of slavery. The South's economy and society were deeply dependent on enslaved labor, while the North increasingly embraced industrialization and opposed the expansion of slavery into newly acquired territories. This ideological and economic divide culminated in the secession of Southern states from the Union and the outbreak of war in 1861. Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States, assumed leadership during this turbulent period. His leadership was marked by a steadfast commitment to preserving the Union and ultimately abolishing slavery. The Emancipation Proclamation in 1863 declared the freedom of enslaved people in Confederate-held territory, setting the stage for a broader struggle for civil rights. The Civil War was a brutal conflict that witnessed some of the bloodiest battles in American history, such as Gettysburg and Antietam. It also saw the contributions of African American soldiers, whose service helped shift the course of the war and highlighted the injustice of slavery. After the Union's victory in 1865, the United States faced the daunting task of Reconstruction. This period aimed to rebuild the South, integrate the formerly enslaved population into American society, and establish civil rights for African Americans. The 13th Amendment to the Constitution abolished slavery, while the 14th and 15th Amendments granted citizenship and voting rights to African Americans. However, Reconstruction was fraught with challenges, including resistance from white supremacists, the rise of the Ku Klux Klan, and the implementation of discriminatory, Jim Crow, laws that enforced racial segregation. Despite these obstacles, African Americans made significant strides during this period, including the election of African American representatives to Congress and the establishment of black-owned businesses and schools. The late 19th and early 20th centuries witnessed a profound transformation in the United States as the nation experienced rapid industrialization and a massive wave of immigration. Industrialization was driven by technological innovations such as the steam engine, the telegraph, and the assembly line. This period saw the rise of large-scale manufacturing, the expansion of railroads, and the growth of cities. Industries like steel, oil, and textiles flourished, propelling the United States into a global economic powerhouse. This economic boom attracted millions of immigrants from Europe and Asia seeking economic opportunities and freedom from political and religious persecution. Immigrants settled in urban areas, contributing to the diversity and dynamism of American society. They played a crucial role in building the nation's infrastructure and workforce. However, industrialization also brought about significant challenges. Labor conditions in factories and mines were often harsh, leading to labor movements and the fight for workers' rights. Social and economic disparities grew, leading to increased inequality and calls for reform. In response to these challenges, progressive movements emerged, advocating for reforms in areas like labor, women's suffrage, and consumer protection. Figures like Theodore Roosevelt and Woodrow Wilson championed progressive policies that sought to address the excesses of industrialization and promote social justice. This era laid the foundation for the modern United States, with its dynamic economy, diverse population, and ongoing debates about the balance between economic growth and social welfare. The experiences of the Civil War and Reconstruction, along with the transformative effects of industrialization and immigration, continue to shape the nation's identity and its ongoing pursuit of liberty and equality for all. Chapter 7: The U.S. in the 20th Century, World Wars and the Cold War. The 20th century brought about significant global challenges and transformations for the United States, including its involvement in 2 world wars and the protracted ideological struggle known as the Cold War. World War I, 1914 to 1918. The United States initially remained neutral when World War I erupted in Europe in 1914. However, as the conflict escalated and American interests became increasingly threatened, the U.S. entered the war in 1917. This marked a turning point in American foreign policy as the nation became a major player on the global stage. American involvement in World War I had far-reaching effects, both domestically and internationally. The war effort led to a significant mobilization of the American economy, with industries churning out weapons, equipment, and supplies for the Allied forces. This wartime industrialization accelerated economic growth and contributed to the rise of the United States as a global economic powerhouse. Following the war, President Woodrow Wilson played a key role in the establishment of the League of Nations, a precursor to the United Nations, in an effort to promote international cooperation and prevent future conflicts. However, the U.S. Senate rejected the Treaty of Versailles and the League of Nations, signaling a retreat from global involvement in the interwar years. The Great Depression, 1929–1930s, the 1920s brought a period of economic prosperity known as the Roaring Twenties. However, the decade ended in a catastrophic stock market crash of 1929, leading to the Great Depression, one of the most challenging economic crises in American history. This period of widespread unemployment and economic hardship persisted throughout much of the 1930s and had a profound impact on American society and politics. World War II, 1939 to 1945, the attack on Pearl Harbor by Japan in 1941 thrust the United States into World War II. The U.S. played a critical role in the Allied victory over the Axis powers, contributing troops, resources, and industrial might. The war effort led to a remarkable economic transformation, as American factories produced vast quantities of war material, and millions of Americans enlisted in the armed forces or joined the workforce to support the war. World War II had significant social and political repercussions. The war's end in 1945 marked the beginning of the United States and the Soviet Union's rivalry, known as the Cold War, which would dominate international relations for decades. At home, the war led to important advances in civil rights, as African American soldiers returning from the front lines demanded equality and contributed to the civil rights movement. The Cold War, 1947 to 1991, the Cold War was a period of ideological and geopolitical competition between the United States and the Soviet Union. The conflict was characterized by espionage, nuclear arms races, proxy wars, and a divided world into Western and Eastern blocs. The U.S. adopted a policy of containment, aiming to prevent the spread of communism and promoting American values worldwide. This policy led to significant foreign interventions, including the Korean War and the Vietnam War. Despite the global tensions of the Cold War, the United States experienced significant domestic changes during this time. The civil rights movement, the women's rights movement, and the counterculture of the 1960s were all influential in shaping the nation's social and political landscape. The 20th century was marked by the United States' emergence as a superpower, its commitment to democratic principles, and its leadership in global affairs. The century's challenges and triumphs continue to shape the nation's identity and its role in the world today. Chapter 8, Civil Rights Movement, 1950s to 1960s. The civil rights movement of the 1950s and 1960s was a pivotal and transformative period in American history, marked by a determined push for racial equality, justice, and an end to racial segregation and discrimination. Origins and context. The roots of the civil rights movement can be traced back to the long history of racial inequality and segregation in the United States, which persisted even after the abolition of slavery. African Americans faced systemic racism, including discriminatory laws, segregation in schools and public facilities, and limited voting rights. The movement gained momentum in the 1950s as a response to ongoing racial injustice and inequality. Influenced by the principles of nonviolent resistance and inspired by leaders like Mahatma Gandhi, civil rights activists organized protests, boycotts, and acts of civil disobedience to challenge segregation and discrimination. Key Figures and Events, Brown v. Board of Education, 1954, a landmark Supreme Court decision that declared racial segregation in public schools unconstitutional, overturning the separate but equal doctrine established in Plessy v. Ferguson, 1896. Montgomery Bus Boycott, 1955 to 1956. Rosa Parks' refusal to give up her bus seat to a white passenger in Montgomery, Alabama, led to a year-long boycott of the city's bus system, ultimately resulting in a Supreme Court ruling against segregation on public buses. Civil Rights Act of 1964. This groundbreaking legislation, signed into law by President Lyndon B. Johnson, outlawed discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. It ended racial segregation in public places and banned employment discrimination on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. Voting Rights Act of 1965. This law aimed to eliminate barriers to voting, particularly for African Americans in the South, who faced various forms of voter suppression. It provided federal oversight of elections and banned discriminatory voting practices. March on Washington, 1963. The iconic March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom drew hundreds of thousands of participants and featured Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s famous "I Have a Dream" speech, calling for an end to racial discrimination and a more equitable society. Impact and legacy. The civil rights movement achieved significant legislative victories, dismantling legal segregation and expanding civil rights protections for all Americans. However, the struggle for racial equality did not end with the passage of these laws. The movement had a profound and lasting impact on American society, politics, and culture. Chapter 9: Contemporary America, Late 20th Century Present. The Civil Rights Movement's legacy. The achievements of the Civil Rights Movement in the 1950s and 1960s continued to shape American society. While legal segregation ended, the struggle for racial equality persisted. African Americans and other marginalized groups pushed for broader civil rights, economic opportunities, and social justice. The Vietnam War. The Vietnam War, 1955 to 1975, was a deeply divisive conflict that sparked protests and anti-war movements across the United States. The war's impact on American society and politics led to a re-evaluation of U.S. foreign policy, technological advancements. The late 20th century witnessed rapid technological advancements. The rise of personal computers and the Internet revolutionized communication, commerce, and daily life, giving birth to the information age. Economic shifts. Economic changes included the rise of multinational corporations, the decline of manufacturing industries in some regions, and the growth of the service sector. These shifts had profound effects on employment, income inequality, and regional economies. End of the Cold War. The Cold War concluded in 1991 with the dissolution of the Soviet Union. The United States emerged as the world's sole superpower, reshaping global politics and international relations. Contemporary America is characterized by its complexity and diversity, with a multitude of challenges and opportunities. The nation continues to grapple with issues related to social justice, political polarization, economic disparities, and global engagement. The choices made in the present will shape the trajectory of the United States in the years to come, as it continues to evolve and adapt to changing circumstances both domestically and internationally.